All right, welcome everybody to the Black Book Interactive Project Extending the Reach Scholar Program webinar series. This is our second webinar series. My name is Sarah Arbuthnot-Lent. I am the Scholar Program Coordinator for BBIP. Really happy to have you all join us. I have a couple of housekeeping things to start with. I know most of you have submitted your paperwork, so thank you for doing so. If you haven't, I need your W-9 ASAP, please, so that we can get you your money. And I also need your photo and a brief bio for our website. I'm hoping to get that up early next week so our website can be live and we can have that updated. You all got the information on CLA. That's coming up that first week of April. You had the link to get your hotel rooms. I only heard from a couple people that wanted to share rooms, so I connected them. If you're looking for a roommate to cut costs, let me know and I can connect you with somebody else, hopefully. You have that schedule for the special sessions there at CLA. Those are going to be really interesting to see. I'm excited to see them. And then we have that breakfast that Saturday morning from 7 to 8:45, where both cohorts last year, this year, and consultants will all be in attendance, and you all get a chance to meet and chat and eat, pick each other's brains a little bit. And yes, so your first payment of $300 will be coming your way soon. I'll let you know when you can be on the lookout for that. It hasn't quite made its way through KU yet, but that's coming. And then I thought we would start with everybody introducing themselves. You've heard from me. Folks at KU, you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mariama Graham. I am the oldest person in the room, probably. But I'm excited to see everyone, and I really am looking forward to working with the second cohort, and I'll be talking to you a little bit more later.
Hi everyone, my name is Jade Harrison. I am the project manager for the Black Book Interactive Project, and I'm also a first year PhD student here at the University of Kansas. So I'm looking forward to our webinar, and I'm looking forward to meeting everyone.
Thanks. Let's hear from some of our consultants next. Erin, do you want to introduce yourself?
I can hear you. Unmute, Erin.
There we go. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good. So yeah, hi, I'm Aaron Wolf. I'm the metadata librarian at KU. I've worked with the BBIP project for getting close to 3 years now in consulting capacity at various stages. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all and hearing about your projects.
Thanks. Saritha, you want to go ahead?
Unmute, Saritha.
I am.
Okay.
I'm Saritha Williams. I am a professor of English at Augusta University, and I will be the interim chair for my department beginning in the fall. I'm just finishing up our projects for the first cohort. I'm really excited to see what everybody else has been doing and also kind of sharing what we have done in our group.
I don't know whether to congratulate you or pity you, Saritha, for becoming chair.
Yeah, it's an interim though. It's interim.
Yeah, we know about those.
Thanks, Saritha. Jerry, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Jerry Ward. Mariama is not the only old person. I'm older than she. Independent scholar. I've been working with this project and the project on the history of Black writing forever.
True story. Thank you, sir. Taisha?
I'm unmuting. My name is Taisha Thompson. I look forward to seeing everyone at CLA. I'm a digital humanities postdoc associate at Virginia Tech. And in the fall, I am starting as an assistant professor in the Department of English at Virginia Tech. So I have a bit of a transition there. But looking forward to seeing everyone at CLA and hearing about your projects and getting to know the new cohort.
Thanks very much. All right, I think that's everybody consultant-wise and staff-wise. Now we have our new cohort. Y'all want to just jump in and introduce yourselves, or do you want me to call names? I'm fine either way. Why don't you just jump in?
Hey, hi, I'm Jada, and I'm here as an independent scholar. I'm a writer and editor, and I formerly worked for ProQuest as an indexer, so I have some metadata experience, and I'm excited to see what it's all about.
We love you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jada.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Keaton. I am an African-American community archivist and librarian at the Austin History Center, Austin Public Library. Between the hours of 8 and 5, independently, I am the founder and curator of Art Library Deco, and I am just excited to be a part of this project as a writer and someone who is learning daily.
Wonderful. Good to meet you. So,
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Monet Timmons. I am a second-year English PhD student at the University of Delaware. And yeah, like it's been said, I'm very excited to learn more about this project and to be involved and really be able to collaborate with everyone. So thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Okay. Georgine? Okay.
Oh.
You're on, is Georgine? Somebody gotta talk.
Oh, hello. This is Coco Williams. I am a PhD candidate at Florida State University studying African American literary and cultural studies and American modernism. I'm dabbling with my own digital humanities project where I'm trying to create an online interactive museum. So I'm really interested in learning more about this project, and yeah, I'm excited to be a part of it.
Coco, do we see you at the Zora Festival in Eatonville? Do we ever see you there?
No, I haven't been there.
All right. We see a lot of people, that's why I asked you.
Hi, everyone. Oh. Hi, I'm Crystal Doncourt. I'm an assistant professor of English at SUNY New Paltz, and my work is in African American literature and print culture. I am currently working on a DH project with someone in Cohort 1, the Essence Book Project, and so I'm coming to learn a lot more about digital humanities, and then I'm imagining a future DH project on Black literacy. So yes, that is me.
Wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
And I'm Georgine Beth Montgomery, interim chair of the English and Modern Languages here at Clark Atlanta University. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So we will be having actually one of our web workshops at CAU. So you'll get to be a partial host. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jamisha Rutherford. I'm from Howard University. I teach first year writing and also in the PhD program in English. My fields are African American literature, contemporary mostly, archival studies, and possibly Caribbean literature. Okay. So for my project, I'm working on African American women's humor and hoping to find something that helps with that in the archive. It'll be my dissertation eventually, so trying to move toward that direction.
Wonderful. So I saw
Hi,
Dana.
my name is Ivory Malcolm. Can y'all hear me? Hello? Oh,
Go ahead, Ivory. We can hear you.
okay. My name is Ivory Malcolm. I am the head of circulation at the Anderson County Library in Anderson, South Carolina. Y'all probably never heard of it. I'm like 2 hours away from Atlanta. I'm pursuing my master's in library and information sciences right now to become a librarian, and then I have a bachelor's in human services. So I'm just excited about what I can contribute to this project. I formerly worked in the South Carolina room at my library, so I'm just happy to be able to do research again because I've been stuck in circulation with these people for the longest.
Nice to have you. You're from my neck of the woods, Anderson, Pendleton, Spartanburg, that whole area. Nice to have you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. I hope you can hear me. My name is Ashley Simmons. I am a first-year PhD student at KU. I've done work in queer science fiction, but I hope to like kind of expand my repertoire a bit with the BBIP project. So I share everyone else's sentiments. I'm excited to be here. I look forward to working with you all. And I look forward to seeing you at CLA.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Dr. Graham.
Hi. Okay, I'll go. I haven't gone. Is this working? Okay. Hi, I'm sorry, I've got my child here. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Goins-Juve. I am an independent research scholar, former archivist, university archivist at Bowling Green. I am interested, so I was in the previous cohort, but I had to withdraw. This is kind of personal, just because I was released from employment. So I'm going to continue. I have one of my former students that works at the Charles Wright Museum in Detroit. So we are going to digitize a finite number of resources from their book collection, which is not even organized. And hopefully we will be able to have some resources to be able to do digital humanities project with a local history kind of twist.
Welcome back, Megan.
Thank you.
I see you are well supported there.
Yes, I've got my support right here.
So Dana, I saw your face earlier.
That's me.
Okay.
I am Dana Chandler. I'm the university's archivist at Tuskegee University, associate professor of history, and looking forward to this.
Thank you so much for being part of this. We have a good conversation to have later. I wrote you a note earlier. Okay, we've got, who are we missing? Is that everybody?
No.
Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Latanzia Evans, and I am a first-year PhD student at the University of Memphis in Literary and Cultural Studies, and I am focused on African-American literature and digital humanities. And my goal is to learn as much as I can and help this shape my dissertation. And I'm also currently an instructor of English at Mississippi Valley State University.
Okay, so you're at Memphis in the PhD program, but you're teaching it back.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I think that's everybody. Thank you for introducing yourselves. Thanks for being here. I'll go ahead and say again, if you're not speaking, if you can mute your microphone, that helps everybody's sound be the best that it can be. The mute button is either down in the very left-hand corner of your screen or in the upper right-hand part of your picture, if you have a picture. And that's it for me. I will turn it over to Dr. Graham.
So again, thanks to all of you for joining us, for taking the leap. For some of you, it's kind of extending where you're already standing, but it's really exciting to see all of you. You realize that we are now 28 strong in terms of the BBIP cohorts, 14 from the first cohort, a few of whom are on the line now, and 14 of you. So we're growing by leaps and bounds. I've asked Sarah to send you, and you may have received it already, but you will get it, sort of our cheat sheet, so that you know who who BPIP's parents are or parent is, and kind of how he came to be, because the staff at the Project on the History of Black Writing keep reminding us that BPIP is kind of all-consuming. It takes over everything, and people forget about the sort of the source, the root. The branches are somehow shaping and moving around, but the tree and the root, we don't know. So I want to just give you a little bit of that background. First, I'll talk about myself just briefly, and then we'll talk about HW. So I'm here at the University of Kansas. I am in my 21st year, which means most of my career has been spent here. I was at 2 previous places, as was the Project on History of Black Writing, but I will retire from Kansas. So trust me, I will not be going to another university. I will be leaving Kansas, and that will be it. But I will still hopefully be doing this really exciting work that started about 3/4 of the way through my career. So that's a little bit about me. We can talk more about the kinds of work I've done, you know, in our session when we get to Memphis. But BPIP, before BPIP, I want you to know that there was a parent called the Project on the History of Black Writing. It is still the parent, and that is older than most of you. It was founded in 1983, so it really is a parent because it's older than most people right now. And that work was primarily a recovery project. Our first name was the Afro-American Novel Project. We've evolved into the Project on History of Black Writing, but it was essentially recovery work, and we've done a good job of that. But we kept that work for a long time without it being accessible. So BPIP has given us the opportunity to digitize, convert this work not a website, it will be a website, but to convert it to a readable file so that people can actually create work, do knowledge, build more knowledge, do their research from it. So BPIP has had these several earlier iterations, and the latest one, of course, is the digital one. We've had 3 rounds of funding. We're now at the end of a second of our ACLS Mellon grant, looking forward, hopefully, to an NEH grant and possibly some other foundation monies in the near future. So you're coming in at a good time, because we can show how robust we are, how much we're growing, and the excitement that people have about the work. So on that sheet, you will see the 4 components of BPIP, and this is kind of important because not as opposed to just being sort of just a digital project, we are sort of multifaceted, and those components are really important. The first, of course, is the digital archive that we keep expanding. We're now up to about 4,000. That is, we have been adding on collections that we still have yet to digitize. And that work is being done here at the University of Kansas in conjunction with the University of Chicago, our partner since the beginning of the early phases of BPIP's project. That partnership has enabled us to move pretty far along. We hope to be able to move faster when both sides will be doing the digitizing and the conversion work. That is University of Chicago, led by Hoyt Long, and here at KU. The second big component of BPIP is, of course, its metadata schema, which we're still refining. It is apparently one of the most attractive features of BPIP, since we get lots of requests for our metadata schema all the time. And that grew out of our concern that in the archives that currently exist, there was really no way to understand implications of race and the way in which it affects texts themselves. So we took it upon ourselves, a very bold move on our part, to come up with a metadata schema that accounts for factors of race and difference. So we're still working on that, but that was one of the projects that we got funded through the National Endowment for the Humanities, who of course remains one of our partners. The third part of BPIP is the philologic interface, which you will have access to. Hoyt could not be here today from the University of Chicago, but the philologic is the way in which we access the database. It allows you to really ask the kinds of questions, do the kinds of searches that you're interested in. That's what the philo. So it is the in-between the database itself and you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Finally, you are the most important component of BPIP right now. You are our fourth component in the BPIP Scholars Program, which I think is fairly novel in terms of projects like this. Many people do archives, they build archives, they make them accessible in one form or another, but they don't create the training program that brings scholars together, creates a community, and expands the work. So we are really proud that you are in the second cohort, and the second cohort is connected to the first cohort. And some of you, of course, were invited by members of the first cohort. That's really exciting. So we really are growing. So it's a community. You know, we see ourselves as a family, an extended family, people who work together, who share information, who learn from each other, and occasionally we have a good time together. We will be meeting at, in Memphis at CLA. That's one of our partners, and I'll mention that in a minute, but it's where we know we can get the largest number of people who are interested in this kind of work. And that's why we've chosen to meet annually at CLA. Sometime we did a workshop there last year, a post-conference workshop. This year, Cohort 1 is making their presentations in 2 separate sessions, Thursday and Friday at CLA, and you will be introduced and welcomed to that community. So we may go back to the workshop, pre or post workshop method in the future. Of course, that all depends on funding. But so the 4 components, and as I said, you can review that in that sheet that you have. So we operate here at the University of Kansas. They've given us space for the English department, but we are fast growing out of our sort of outer garments. But we will get, cross that bridge when we come to it. On that sheet too, it tells you why BBIP is important, but we really are making a big dent into the digital landscape because we recognized very early that the work we were doing and the collections that we had acquired don't find themselves in what is now the most widely used form of accessing knowledge and research, whether it's JSTOR or whether it's ProSite or whether it's Project Muse, and certainly Happy Trust. We don't exist for the most part. That is, the material, the work of African American literature in general does not exist in significant numbers. So we're trying to change that, which means we have to do a lot of partnerships and a lot of connections. And those connections are listed at the bottom. Clearly, the National Endowment for the Humanities, who has been our partner for a long time. It's been HBW's partner, now it's BPIP's partner, because we go back many, many years doing public programs and professional development workshops through their vision of education. And that is sort of long standing. Our second funder is the American Council on Learning Societies, which of course is a Mellon funded project. They have given us money, and you are being brought into the sort of the tail end of the ACLS grant. So that's who's giving you money. Just in case you see those people, be nice to them so that they can continue to fund us. And I say that because I actually saw somebody recently and did not know I was talking to her until she introduced herself. So feel your P's and Q's. Here at KU, it's the Institute for Digital Research and Humanities. They are our local sponsor and help us a lot. Aaron just mentioned who he was in terms of a metadata librarian. He is with IDHR. So IDRH, excuse me. So that is our local affiliate here. The Chicago Text Lab, of course, is a specific entity where we work, University of Chicago. It's the University of Chicago as a whole, but specifically the Chicago Text Lab, which is their DH outfit. The HBCU Alliance has been our partner for Cohort 1. They, I think, are doing some other things now, but we did work with them, and many of you may be members of the HBCU Library Alliance. So we're glad to have you in this cohort. We didn't have quite as many in the first one, so it's really great to have many new librarians here. The Afro BWW, you'll know more about later, but that is sort of, if you have a cycle of research, data mining, publishing, Afro BWW is a digital publishing outfit that will allow and help you to make your stuff available in that form. We believe in online and print publishing. They will help us with the online version. So technically in BPIP, you can start a project, move through it, get all the help you need, publish it before the project ends. That's kind of the way we see it. it's a full cycle. And again, that's pretty unusual. Most people get a lot of work done. I certainly know I do, but the publishing is much, much harder. You can't get to the end of the process or making it accessible to larger communities. I think I got everybody. As I said, HBW is a parent, so it is clearly our partner, but everything we do comes under the umbrella of the Project on the History of Black Writing, since that is, you know, the baseline. Did I get everything in, Sarah? Okay, so overview and what BBIP is consisting of. So I think I did, but we can have some questions maybe after Jade, or you want to stop and have some questions now, or should Jade take over? Any questions, anybody? Yeah. Okay, so let me.
Wait, Mariama?
Yeah, Jerry.
I just like to interject, welcome the new cohort and those who are returning. And unfortunately, Kenton is not with us.
Right.
But I think what we will have to do at CLA during the breakfast and at other times is to have a very focused conversation about what digital humanities is and is not. I've talked to Kenton about the importance of working with people in libraries in computer science. Once you have got the sense of what the hardware is, how do you use all the software? Because one thing that is consistent is no matter how much data you collect, nothing is going to replace your ability to ask questions. I would also like to request that you would send the consultants the names and email addresses for people from both cohorts, because with Ivy at Anderson, South Carolina, I would certainly like to share information about Arthenia Bates Milliken and what happened recently with that project, because that is opening up and it seems very right for what she's trying to do. Georgine, I'm very interested in what you plan to do, especially since, you know, we had wonderful talks at Clark Atlanta. And there are other people, and I will have ideas perhaps to share with you about what's going on. So all I'm going to say is that we need to go to CLA with the notion that we're really going to try to see how this project really is a child of the Project on the History of Black Writing and how it will carry the work of that project forward.
All right, so another question? Okay, I just want to say you just heard, of course, from Jerry Ward. I want to make it really clear that Jerry was on board at the very founding of the Project on the History of Black Writing. He makes sure we stay on track. So, and he will not hesitate to question and challenge you if you get off track. But Jerry is very, very valuable in terms of helping us to understand the larger picture of what we're doing as we get really excited about something in particular, but are not making the connection necessarily to the larger body of knowledge and the way in which we think about multiple communities. So his most recent retirement job is to work with the prisons in New Orleans. So he's still teaching everybody, different communities. But Jerry, thank you, and thank you for continuing to support us and be a part of the project. So I always tell people, if you have any question about anything, ask Jerry. I'm probably not going to know most of those things, but he knows them all. So you've got, you have a giant in terms of knowledge here on our hands. We're very, very fortunate. So I thank you, Jerry, for those comments. We'll see all of you in Memphis, of course, and you're welcome. More conversation at that time. I'm going to turn this over to Jade now, and she's already introduced herself.
Yes. So hi, everyone. Like I said before, my name is Jade. I am a doctoral student here at KU. My research interests include, well, I'm in the field of African American literature, but my research interests focus on utilizing data analytic methods to trace trends and shifts in contemporary Black women's writing. throughout African American literary history. And to complement my research, I create innovative and interactive data visualizations to showcase my findings. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just sort of my role in sort of overseeing the novels that are currently being digitized. And then I'm going to talk mostly about our metadata schema or our data set that we are currently working on and further refining. So far, we have scanned approximately 2,000 novels. Our eventual goal is to scan and digitize approximately 4,000. And unless we get more novels, which is, very likely. So we recently just received an update from Hoyt Long over at the University of Chicago, informing us that he and his team are close to uploading approximately 400 more novels to Philologic, our database. So this will open up more research directions for our BBIP scholars. So just a little bit more information about our data set that we're working on. So as Dr. Graham sort of talked about before, our data set is the second phase or like the second major component of the Black Book Interactive project. So we're focusing specifically on developing a sustainable, functional, and robust data set to accompany novels that we've digitized so far. Our overall goal is to consider how metadata can be used to understand Black literary history through collecting information related to publishing histories, thematic content, and even geographical locations in order to analyze the connections between Black authors, literary genres, and historical periods. So just a little bit of background information. Big data is a really big buzzword, right? Like especially within the digital humanities and DH communities. And oftentimes for literary scholars, we don't have a lot of information that exists in accessible forms where we can access and manipulate information about contemporary literature for research purposes. So while our data collection is still a work in progress, we want to create an entry point for analyzing and identifying relationships between large numbers of novels published from the 19th to the 21st century. So right now we're working on tidying our data, right? So this involves combining our observations with variables in order to further clean and refine our data set. And this is also something that's not really talked about in terms of data collection. Gathering and assembling data requires a lot of time and consistency, but refining metadata requires thinking about alternative ways for organizing and categorizing data efficiently and effectively. So, but by working with metadata that is very clean and organized, we can better engage in the practice of distant reading, which will allow us as literary scholars to uncover patterns and trends across a larger percentage of Black novels. So overall, our aim is to analyze literary text-specific information, such as titles, genres, original publication dates, historical periods, alongside biographical information related to author birth dates, gender, education, literary awards, or even places of origin. We're also collecting information related to linguistic, thematic, stylistic, and narrative features about the novels in our database. So that's sort of the overall goal for our data set that we're working on. Like I said, and like Dr. Graham said earlier, it's still a work in progress, but once it's finished, it'll serve as a tool, a more accessible tool for literary scholars and even you guys to further your research in African American literary study.
So I want to tag on to that last statement that Jay made, because Jerry would remember when we founded HPW, we thought it would just be maybe a 5-year project, that we would finish what we were doing. So here we are with BBIP now, 36 years later, and we still haven't finished the work that we were doing. So one must be very careful to say, you know, when you will finish, when you expect, because there are evolutions of the work, new ways of reading and accessing the work. And the biggest issue, and I want to read a line actually from a statement that I've been working on with some colleagues today, and that is, we have done a really good job of having gathering immense bodies of information. And so we're saying tools have been developed to deal with our immense digital libraries. We have those in place. Virtually every library has some form of a digital collection. Most of those are major institutions. But what that has happened is that it's also been an advantage and a disadvantage. What has been digitized, what has been included, misses a lot of stuff. And the missing gets more visible when you look at the research findings. And so we're just now turning a corner, and more people are looking specifically at what got left out. So it's not just vast majority of writing that comes within an African American community, but Native American community, immigrant communities. Those bodies of writing are still outside of these main frames. So it is very possible that the shift, the sort of shift that is occurring now, might become the main trend. We'd like to think that we sort of gave leadership to that shift, as it were, and that new trend, and that we've laid the foundation for models and templates that people can use and build on. And you are part of that process of having to refine the work, give examples of what's possible. And so your role is really, really important. I want to emphasize that. I want to say one other thing, because we do have, of course, two data sets, or I should say two archives, two databases. One before 1924, one after 1924. And you know why we have those two. The one is work that's in the public domain. After 24, it's work that's copyrighted. So when you get access to the philologic and to our database, you have to be very conscious of the fact that you have signed a user agreement and that this is for your research purposes only. This cannot be shared broadly because you will be violating copyright if you do so. Now, let me quickly say that in the third phase of BBIP, where we are now, we're the second cohort, but we're in the third stage of the project, we are developing access control system to protect copyright. So we're now having to work with engineers and cybersecurity specialists who can help us not violate people's copyright. At the same time, we need to do our research. But I just want to make sure that you are aware that you are working in a protected environment, a secure environment, and that the user agreement we do take seriously because we do want to honor the laws, the ownership and the authorship that exists. So that was what I wanted to add. And I know some of you know about that, you may have sent it in already, but we will bug you about that because we will have to give you access to do the work that we know that you want to do, that you need to do, and that's important to do. Okay, so where are we on the schedule, Sarah?
Just coming to the end, I will add to that, if you go to the website, the BBIP website, and review the webinars from the last cohort, the first one that's there is about the introduction to Philologic and using it, that Hoyt Long did for us last year. Go ahead and review that. When you are ready to access Philologic, I will, after today, I will email out the usage agreement, and when you're ready to log in, you can sign that and send it back to me. And once I have it on file, then I will send you the login information for you to use personally. So that's how you'll get access to Philologic. But yeah, do review that webinar. And if you have additional questions on using Philologic, accessing, doing the things that it can do, Hoyt said he would be happy to do a webinar on Philologic, another one with you folks. So just let us know what you're interested in. We'd be happy to set that up.
So Sarah mentioned the website. So we have there uploaded the webinars that we have done previously. So you can, in your own spare time, if you happen to have it, go and review all that Cohort 1 was involved in. And that might stimulate even more questions to make the webinars that we have, ongoing webinars, really important. Because when you review that, it may not be the same orientation that we did the first round. But we recorded everything, and you can go there at your leisure and review. And that is open to the public. Those webinars are public. So when we say that the website itself, the database, is copyright protected, the webinars are public. So we invite your friends, invite your family, invite fellow librarians, professionals to come and look at this, because we really do want a larger community to evolve out of this. So that is for you to do at your disposal. I want to stop now and ask for questions, for comments, concerns, all of that, all of the above.
I will add, before we move to that, that the webinar series for this year is not intended and will not duplicate what we did last year. There might be some overlap here and there, but it would definitely behoove you to watch that first series and have that information as we move into this new cohort. Now questions, please.
Questions, please. Every question is important.
Hi, it's Crystal. So I have a question just around expectations of our engagement in between the webinars. So ideally, we will be accessing the system and kind of based on our areas of research interest, kind of just playing around and seeing what new ideas come to us, what patterns we're noticing across the database, and making note of that, and maybe, I don't know, trying to write about that, trying to create some kind of additional project based on our findings and what's available. Is that?
Thank you, it's a very good question. As some of you know, that the bottom line, or the central to DH work and to all the work we've ever done, is collaboration. So one of the things that, as we get to know each other better, as we talk and at the breakfast meeting at CLA, and as you send us more information, we will do some clustering. We'll see what interests are aligned, who might be interested in working together. Now, we don't get that perfect, and you have every right to decide, I've already got a partner, we can see what I want to do, and straight ahead. But we do try to create those communities within the cohort so that you can work on projects together. And Saritha is on the line, and Taisha's on the line, and they can talk about what happens out of those partnerships, because it can be very exciting when you bring different sets of skills together to move something forward. So we do encourage the clustering, the collaborative work, and a project that comes out of that. Many people have individual projects as well, and we want to support and encourage and facilitate those individual projects that you might be working on. We obviously want you to be able to take full advantage of the database that we have, figure out ways to improve it, critique it. If it's not working the way you think it should, I mean, we're still in the testing phase. We're still in the testing phase of all this, what we've developed. And Hoyt, I know, would be delighted to hear. For instance, she's not online, but Sarah, who works with Taisha, is actually going to do a user manual for the Philologic, because in the process of working with Philologic, we discovered that people needed more guidance. And so Sarah is going to be developing a user guide. And of course, she's a librarian. She's thinking about a user, and this is absolutely essential. So we hope that those are the kind of things. I mean, you might think that might be spontaneous, but at the end of the day, it's really being thoughtful, thinking about what it is that you want to do, but also looking at yourself as a researcher, as a scholar, but thinking about the user, thinking sort of outside of yourself, and then contributing to the process. So it's both individual and group. It's using, testing the database and our method, our process. And the third component, I'd say, really important here, and it's getting more important every day, is identifying new collections. If you think there are collections out there somewhere, we know that there are, that we need to be working with, that really will constitute the next phase of our work. They'll be very central to phase 3 of BBIP. Because we do need to get a handle on that, or as we used to say in library speak, bibliographic control over this material that's out there. And in a digital era, the assumption is that if you see it in a database someplace, a HathiTrust or a JSTOR or whatever, you assume you have it all. We know better. We know you don't have it all. So, but we are responsible for being sort of the watchdogs of an industry that's exploded, a methodology that everybody's now accessing and utilizing, and making sure that it has the kind, it's inclusive, it's diverse, and it's representative. And that right now is not the case. So we are that sort of, knocking at the door, making sure that the space is at the table so that this work is accessible to more people. But we've got to go through a number of steps. But you are sort of on the firing line in terms of that. But we do strongly encourage you to identify collections that you think are there and that we need to be interested. They don't necessarily have to just be the literary collection. They could be images, they could be music, it could be other kinds of collections, because all of that will eventually come into play. But right now, we're just trying to make sure that people know to keep their ears and eyes open. You may be working with a collection that you don't think about, that people in your area are using and that you know about, but it doesn't have wide accessibility. So that hopefully that answers your question.
It does. You just got me thinking about all of the kind of short fiction that I encounter working in the Christian Recorder or in the Colored American that I don't see unless I'm in the archive looking at that on microfilm or something. So yeah, thank you so much for that.
Most people do not go to those individual archives unless they know they exist. And therefore, and the way we are being taught today is to go to the big databases. And so unless you know that in particular, some of us do know that because of the experiences. I mean, I'm a product of an HBCU, so I always have in the back of my mind, what am I missing? What are they not telling me? I'm just naturally suspicious. But I also know what directions the work is going in, and I look for things there to give me a sign that things are getting better. And so in a sense, the bigger we get, the more lost we also get, or the more, I should say, the more we lose. The bigger we get, the more we lose, because the systems that are put in place are intended to gather material in a particular kind of way. I will be more specific. Most of the material that's in HathiTrust, for instance, and I've been working with them closely now actually for a few days, come primarily from certain institutions. I'd say about 10 or 12 institutions. They come from their library holdings. And so if specific collections don't make it into those library holdings, they're not going to make it into the HathiTrust library. So you can see the problem quite clearly. Now they're becoming, we've been saying this in every grant proposal we write, that there are these collections that are great, people are using them, or what's not there. Now they know what's not there. So we are hopefully at a point where we can have these wonderful cross-fertilizing dialogues that bring more attention to what we missed, but also getting the resources we need to create the databases that are sufficiently inclusive. But you're a small part of that, but you can be a bigger part of that as well as this process moves forward. So.
Thank you so much.
Please, more questions.
I think Taisha has stepped out. Saritha, would you want to talk about your project with the first cohort and give us a little preview of what you're going to talk about at CLA?
Sure, I can talk about that. So I will say that at the very beginning of the project, I was very unsure. I kind of like structure, and there wasn't like a specific structure, which was also fun, but also terrifying. But you just have to kind of trust the process that when you get together and you're working with people in the group, that you will actually be able to kind of figure out something. So I have 3 people in my group. And so one person, Rochelle, is a creative writer, and then Conrad is a librarian, and I'm an English professor who does digital humanities. And so we were trying to think about a way that we could actually come up with something that we wanted to do collectively. And so what we are doing is developing a scalar book. Um, uh, Conrad spent a lot of time working on the BBIP bibliography and finding sources. And so we'll put some of that information into the scalar. I spent some time talking about like how would we search in the database itself, and so we'll put some information like that in there. And we decided that we would focus on a specific theme, and that's Afrofuturism. And that makes a lot of sense because Rochelle is an Afrofuturist, so she would describe what she does as Afro-surrealism. And then I'm also the editor of a digital journal, Third Stone. And so I was already kind of working on that, and we focus on Afrofuturism. So all of this really kind of came together, and we pulled poor Conrad into it because he's like, what is this and what are you all doing? But really he has, you know, taken a liking to it and learned and really kind of pushed us in ways that we couldn't even imagine that we needed to be pushed. So that project is kind of developing a scalar, kind of looking at the novels and the existing database, kind of thinking about them through an Afrofuturistic lens. And so that's kind of a preview as to what we're putting together.
I'm glad you mentioned Conrad, because Conrad was in a discovery mode the whole time, and he would be texting me and with these very, I'd say, revelatory emails with exclamation points and frown, you know, faces with crosses across, because he was saying, and he's a librarian, so he refused to accept the fact that something didn't exist, that he could not find a source for something. He absolutely refused. But in that refusal, he recognized the nature of the problem, the difficulty, that there are hidden sources, and unless you work really hard, you won't find them. So he made it his business to be that hard-working, digging deep librarian who was going to find that 1 or 2 sources of information that might be related to a particular text, because most of the texts that we have in our database are under-researched, under-discussed, clearly not taught. So one of the things that we're talking about is what happens when you create that new body of knowledge and all that it surrounds and put it out there in the world. Does it change the landscape? Of course it does, but we have to read, we have to write, we have to talk about it. So that's why we talk about the cycle going from your research, from preparing the databases, your research, to the publication. And so Sarita has given you an excellent example of how her group has replicated that cycle. Third Stone is the journal. They've carved out a piece of work that they're doing, and it will find its way. And they're working on Scalar, which is what AfroPWW does. Their favorite, platform is Scalar, and we've published some things in Scalar already. So that is a good example of what can happen within a group. But it does give a small iota of view into this bigger problem. And as I said, Conrad was the one that, in my mind, just evolved out of this process with a discovery and with a method. So I don't know what he does to find stuff, but he does. I mean, he's trained as a librarian, but he refused to take no for an answer. And I think the difference between our BBIP scholars and other scholars might be when you reach a point where you don't find anything, you stop. You just assume that it doesn't exist. Believing that something does exist forces you, and that you need to have more information on it, forces you to work harder. So thank you, Sarita, for giving that example, because I think it does very much reflect a sort of general process when things come together for people, and the contribution they're making is really significant. Taisha, did Taisha step back in?
I don't think so. I was going to, we had a couple people who weren't online when we did introductions, so I was going to ask them briefly to introduce themselves. Dinashri, can you say hello?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, it's wonderful to see you all. I'm sorry I joined a little bit late, but it's wonderful to see another cohort of BBIP scholars. And I'm Dhanashri Thorat. I'm currently an assistant professor of English at Mississippi State. And I was involved in the grant writing for this BBIP Scholars grant, and it's really exciting to see you all virtually. And I just wanted to, I guess, repeat some of the things folks have already said, that it's an excellent program. And I think especially as a networking opportunity, this is a foundational project in Black digital humanities. And I would definitely encourage everybody to think about it as a way of reaching out to other folks who are doing very important work in that area. And you'll find that a lot of folks know about this project. And if you go and mention it to them, they'll be very interested in hearing about the kinds of things you're doing with it. So I hope it will be a good experience for everybody, and feel free to reach out to me if you have anything that I can help with. I mainly work in post-colonial digital humanities, and there's definitely a lot of interesting conversations and connections to be made there as well. So thank you for having me on here again today.
Yeah, Dinashri has one of the webinars that you will see. And if you have questions, I'm sure she'll be happy to take them. But also, she'll be joining us for the breakfast at CLA. So you're going to be hearing and talking to her more.
Thanks, Dinashri. And Clarissa, do you want to say hello?
Unmute.
She is. Clarissa, can you say hello? We'll jump in if you have the chance. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Anything more from you folks at KU?
Well, I think I want to maybe take up a point that Saritha made, and I think the BPIP Scholars One I would task you with the responsibility for providing a little bit more critique so that we can improve the product the second time around. So if you do think that more structure is needed, let's talk about that and how to give that structure. Yes, there's a lot to be said about sort of the organic way in which people come together. We had, some basic structure. We have this teaching of the philologic. We have a database that you're learning how to operate. But in terms of developing projects that are associated with the archive, we sort of left that to people themselves after we sort of organized what we thought were groups with shared interests. But if we do need to give more structure, especially since we are writing grant proposals to support that structure, it'll be useful to really have that. The more focused one can be in a grant proposal in terms of you want money to do X, Y, Z, the better chance you have of securing those funds. So I welcome those of you, as I said, who are thinking through it. And Saritha, again, your group was very active and very attentive to method and to structure. Let us know how we can improve, as I said, upon the product.
I have a question.
Thank you.
So I guess it's working off of what Crystal said, and I guess Saritha too. When I first heard that people were going to be presenting in Memphis, I said, oh no, I'm going to have to present in a year. But it seems like I won't have to present in a year. So I'm kind of also unsure about, I'm fine with organic. I don't need a final project, products, mandate, but I do kind of wonder about that as well.
Well, I think you will get a wide range of projects, presentations at CLA. You're going to get group presentations, but even within the group, people have individual projects. And those projects are in various stages of completion. So in a sense, it's a progress report. We do want people to see what's possible. That's the reason that we invited the BPIP Scholar Cohort 2 to join the Cohort 1, so that you can see what kinds of projects and how wide-ranging they are. I don't know, I think that probably Saritha's group, if you don't mind, Saritha, me calling it your group, is probably closer to being finished, except for a particular kind of project that Sarah and Taisha did, because they did an institute where they were training college students at area HBCUs in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. I think maybe it was just Virginia. So they actually had a summer institute and used the Philologic, brought students together, but they were from these HBCUs. I think it was at least some. So they wanted to use the model called Each One Teach One. You bring more people in, you get people in earlier, as opposed to when they're in grad school. Get people in earlier, introduce them to it. So that was a project that had a discrete goal at an end. That is, the students produced work in the summer, and so their work, in a sense, finished earlier because they planned that in the last summer. And they did it as part of their BPIP initiative. So I guess, and again, I think Saritha's project might be, as far as I know, the one that's closest to being conceptually at the end, because they have a production plan in place. But
yeah, and I can speak.
Yeah, you see lots of projects in various stages. Yeah, go ahead, Saritha.
Right, yeah, so because Rochelle had some very specific individual projects she wanted to do, and I was already working on the Third Zone digital journal. Those are probably our two kind of ongoing things, but we wanted to have something like a tangible thing to present, to say, you know, this is what we worked on. And so like for our group activity, that was very intentionally like smaller scale, so that it was something that we could complete. But then I think it's also going to kind of inform some larger conversations. So at CLA, we will be talking about the searching the database for Afrofuturist texts. And that will be the thing that's kind of a finite discussion, and that project will be, you know, will end. But then I will also talk about my work with Third Stone, and Rochelle will talk about her work where she's kind of thinking about this idea of an Afrofuturist virtual conference, and she has a couple other writing projects that she's working on as well that are informed by the things that we did together. So when we present, we will be talking about an end product, but then also kind of the ongoing inspired projects that maybe kind of spiral off of what we've done in BBIP.
Yeah, I'll pick up with that too, because in terms of the idea of project, we probably need to think a little bit broader. So I can think, for instance, of Jacinta's work with Essence, the Essence bestsellers list. So that was kind of a spin-off project because the titles from that collection are now folded into BPIP. They brought a collection to BPIP. They had already digitized. We matched what she brought into what we had, and we are therefore incorporating that. But she wanted to also create a project out of that, and she has written one grant, and she's on the process of writing a second grant. So that's a product too. We facilitated that process. We introduced her to the funders. We are helping her shape that proposal. So the idea of project or product does have a range of meanings. That you have a project that you see is eminently fundable, and we want you to be there. We want to help you get to that point. So, but it does, in other words, she's using the scaffolding from BPIP to do what she needs to do. But also, she brought a collection into BPIP that now people can access, you know, once we get the copyright control issue clear, because those are all, again, copyrighted texts. But again, they're texts that are outside the domain. You know, 300 or 400 or 500 books that people that have been read by women, Black women in particular, for ages, for 20, 25 years, nobody's talking about, nobody knows about, maybe one or two. So there are different kinds of ways of conceiving what the evolution or the history of a particular project. So I hope that clarifies some stuff, but please, more questions. We have a little bit more time.
It did, and it got to my follow-up question. You said people are writing grants based on your scaffolding. So that was my next question. So yeah.
Good, good. And we strongly encourage that. One, because you always need money, but also because I think that is the way to have different kinds of conversations. When you're doing the work that gets shaped into a fundable project, you can have different kinds of conversations. It means essentially that you're at a certain table that you weren't at before. Sure. That would be the simplest way for me to say it. So I have a question. Dana, do you mind if I put you on the spot? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
I know you have a very long history as an archivist at Tuskegee.
I do.
Just off the top of your head, what do you think, just based on what you know now, this project might mean for you?
I don't know. I've been thinking about it. I've got several ideas in mind because of our rich collections that we have here at Tuskegee, and they are amazing.
I know.
I have a lot of stuff that I've been trying over the years to get out to the world.
Mm-hmm.
Our website has had 1.9 million hits, 47% from abroad. Mm-hmm. And our collections are so varied, from an unpublished manuscript from Ralph Ellison.
Oh God. Okay. Here we go.
To Margaret Murray Washington's Journal of the Women's Club.
Oh.
And that's really interesting to me because it talks about what they were reading and what they were listening to and what they were talking about. How, if you were to take away from your understanding of who it was and when it was, you'd think that this was at any school in the nation. It's amazing. It's amazing stuff. And of course, you know, another thing that we have access to here is our rare book collection and our Washington room that most people don't and aren't aware of, which there's probably a lot of material in there that's never been made available to the public like it should. I've been pushing and advocating for years to have a database specifically within the library's system, specific to both the rare book room and the Washington collection, so that people could know what's in there rather than going to the catalog and just doing a search, you know, and that's not always, as you guys know, that's not always going to work.
Yes, and the whole notion of people going on site or online to look for something that you had, but then following up to actually put hands on it, there's a big divide between that, looking and identifying and actually being able to access. Those are two different things. So this is an example of a collection that's been around a long time. This is a collection, which is institutional.
The second, where we are, the oldest public archive in the nation is located in Montgomery, Alabama, the Alabama Department of Archives and History, and they're 2 years older than us.
There you go. So here we have the case of state or institutional. We've also been talking to private collectors who have large collections of books, and they're even in worse state because they haven't been cataloged or processed. They've simply been collecting. I talked to a gentleman a few weeks ago with a collection who had to buy another house to put his collection in because he didn't want to put it in storage. He was afraid of what might happen if he put it in storage. So he's got a controlled environment to put it in. So this notion of collections that are out there that need some attention, we hope that what can happen in your case, that it would facilitate the infrastructure that you need to get what needs to be done at Tuskegee.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. You know, we just got Albert Murray's books. I don't know whether you guys know that or not, but all of Albert Murray's library collection and his audio collection donated to the university. And that's a lot of material that Yeah, it was never cataloged. It is cataloged now, and it is within the library's catalog system, but it is not where people can say, "Oh, this is the Albert Murray collection," and look at it completely, as a database. Which I feel like that's something I would like to see done before I retire.
I hear you. No, I'm in that space too. What do I want to do before I retire? There's a lot to do, but I think in the network that we want to provide you with and give you access to, some of this stuff is possible. A lot of, there is funding to do work like this. Sometimes you're being pit against other priorities in an institution. At Tuskegee, for instance, I know that you've gotten a couple of NEH grants. I know this, but when you go into NEH with 4 or 5 grants, only one's going to get funded.
Right.
You know this, and I know which one got funded this time at your institution. So it is problematic. So, but creating a sort of another way in which you can access, we can talk about this, I think is what we're providing. Another way in which you can move forward on this really important work that nobody knows better than you. Nobody knows better about what needs to be done and what we're missing. We are the losers on this end by not having access to this knowledge. But I think this just personifies, illustrates the difficulty in one example, but a very big example of collections that are just not accessible or available. And therefore, when you read the culture, you read the environment, you read the landscape, you don't read it with this in mind.
There's one other thing you've just brought to our attention. I'm really concerned about the state of HBCUs because of the declining enrollment, and and we've lost some.
Yeah.
Concordia in Selma is now gone. Yet there's a room there in Concordia with a lock on it that has all kinds of materials in it. The people that have published that had to do with the civil rights movement, etc. And it's in a locked room in there that I can't get hold of. We need to develop this system of cohorts so that we can have some place where these other HBCUs can also be a part of one another. And, HBCU Library Alliance is a good thing, and we've been a part of it and been active in it for many years. But I still think that there's these others that are not part of that, that can't pay the fees.
Right.
And we're losing them.
Yes.
Selma, Talladega College, Miles, Stillman, here in Alabama alone.
Yeah. You put your
Hello? Hello?
Jerry.
This is Jerry. Yes, Dana, I think perhaps you might want to explore making a plea to United Negro College Fund, UNCF, Michael Lomax, who would understand this kind of problem and might make some suggestions or direct you as to what should be done or what kind of conversation has to be had about the collections we're losing, because those things in that locked room may be eaten up by silverfish for all I know. I don't know. No control. I'd also like to suggest, and this is for Saritha and who mentioned the surreality, that one of the strengths of what Mariama and I and other people did was indeed collaboration. And we must have much more of this. I also want to suggest that everybody in this project needs to think about history and needs to think about contemporary politics, which are, both of them are surreal. So don't think that you are out of it, because you are in it and you are producing it. And when you dwell on that, in terms of what you're doing with DH, you'll be surprised what you come up with. So I'm not going to be nonpartisan about this. But the whole point is, let us not think that we can run off with Afrofuturism without bringing it back as an analytic tool to deal with what we are living through. Finally, Kenton is online. So I'd like to, I'm going to ask Kenton if he would please say a few things about what he thinks we really need to be doing at CLA.
Okay. Introduce yourself first.
Hi, everyone. My name, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Hey.
Hey, sorry to be joining late. We had a job candidate today, so, a little last minute fumble in the schedule. So, I was a little late today. My name is Kenton Ramsey. I'm assistant professor of African American literature and history at the University of Texas at Arlington. And I guess my biggest contribution, I would just say one of the things that I think we should start thinking about is just basically what's possible, and think about asking questions and think about what skill sets do we want to acquire over basically 6 to 8 months. DH is an exciting, expanding world. However, I do want us to recognize the limitations of time and work in our lives, but I'm really excited to kind of work with some of the software, work with some of the text, and also just think about what's possible. I think that's the one biggest part about DH. We really have to have a great imagination when coming to it, so we can think about ideas, think about new types of questions. But after we think about those questions, then we can start actually putting together plans and think about how much labor is involved. So I'm excited to see everyone at CLA. And again, thank you, Dr. Graham, for, organizing and being such a, consistent and dutiful force in this.
Thank you, Kim. He's on the line, so I can say this in front of him. This project took its real impetus. He was a grad student here at KU. So we are very fortunate that he's still involved in the process, not only involved in the process, but also sending people to us like Jade, who studied with Kenton and is now here. So we were, and I didn't say this in my little brief history, but so about 2010 is when this project really sort of became conceptualized. First funding didn't come till later, but it was being thought about as early as 2010, the BPIP version or expansion of HBW. So we're now, what, 10 years old? We're 10, so this is a 10-year-old as opposed to HBW being a 36-year-old baby or 36-year-old parent. So, so we are sort of in a new phase now. I think we've learned some things and there's some exciting possibilities. I actually feel like I want to share some of those possibilities with you, but I'm under the gun to not say anything until it happens. But I'm really glad that you all are now with us so that we can move forward together stronger with many different types of interests and ask the kind of questions that we need to ask, but also develop some hard plans with some funding behind that. So each of you can do your group project, but you can also have additional projects like everybody has already. As you heard, Sarika, people have individual projects, they have group projects. So the expectation really is to go as far as you can with the time that you have, given that BPIP is not, it's both on-site and online, but mainly it's online. It's distant access. We meet once a year. We might see each other at some other conference, but basically it's once a year. And we don't know if we will, to answer your question, earlier question, we may not be giving presentations at the next CLA, but we may have a workshop where you will come and lead a group of people and share some of the work that you're doing, work in progress. So there are different kinds of models that we can consider, but you did hear what has been done with the cohort #1 and what has happened since the beginning of time. Dana, thank you so much for sharing that. That was really exciting. And Kent, I'm glad you could join us. I know we're getting close, but if there are any more questions and any more housekeepings here that you thought of in the middle of this, we have about 7 minutes. Well, I'm going to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm excited. I hope that you see possibilities and not necessarily just a lot of work ahead, but there is a lot of work ahead. Let me put it that way. But we are expanding our infrastructure, shall I say, so that we can collectively support one another in a way that won't put too much more work on you, and that being part of a community will give you opportunities opportunities and give you support systems that you otherwise would not have. I think I can promise you that you will learn a lot. You will probably have questions all the time. I still do. And you will wonder, you know, where the end will be, like I did when we founded HBW in 1983. And I'm about to retire and it is still going strong. So I think that you can get an idea of a long-term process, and we'll just do the piece of it that we know needs to be done now and keep moving forward. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. And did Clarissa ever unmute? I think I heard, did she come on? Clarissa, are you there? I thought there were a couple more people who joined us. Okay.
Clarissa commented over in the group chat, but I'm not sure why we can't hear her.
So so Clarissa did, in fact, West White joined us, and I know she's from Bethune-Cookman. I think she's both a librarian as well as a member of the faculty, so I do know that. So we introduced you, Clarissa, even though we can't hear you, and at least we heard your chat. So if you have more to say, you can chat it up. So did anybody else join us, Sarah?
I think everybody else had a chance to introduce themselves.
Okay, all right. Okay. All I can say is thank you for being with us. Thanks, Sarah, as you know, who's a machine, who pulls it all together, who keeps us all together. Jade, who is stepping into a new position. You know, she came to grad school thinking the new world was opening up, and we just loaded her with work. And so she's absolutely hardworking, and we can't complain by any means. But you will see all of us at CLA, and we'll be sending some things in the mail. And I know you need to get your stuff back to Sarah. Looks like a couple of people have not turned in that necessary paperwork to get paid. That's all I gotta say.
If you don't want to get paid, that's okay with us.
Then we are in a university structure. We don't manage the money, they do. So, but thank you, everyone.
So our next webinar is Friday, March 20th. It'll be at the same time at 1 p.m. To 2:30. Kenton will be leading that along with Professor Amy Earhart, and we'll look forward to that. I think that's it.
Yeah.
If you have questions about anything, you can send them to me, and I can forward them on to other folks. I will share everybody's email addresses with you all later today, so you can reach out and get in touch if there's folks you already want to talk to. I think that's it. Thanks for being here, folks.
Okay. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.